right. So today we're working on this guy right here. Looks a little bit more orange in the top on the screen here than it does in real life, but this top color here is pretty hard to mix. I've been playing around with it a little bit, and I find orange and black, or orange and gray, actually are the things that you want to mix together. So I started off by mixing a really light gray, then I added in some yellow, and then some red until I got about the same color. It's a little bit more gray on here, but these colors aren't quite as vibrant. So I think I'm going to start with back and forth strokes going along the top. So we're going to start with this, just back and forth. It's almost like a tan with a little bit of less saturation in it. Just getting the top and the sides, as you usually want to do, if you want it to look a little bit more finished. Always nice to get those. And when you wind up with these scratchy strokes, that just means that you probably need a little bit more water in your paint. So I'm just going to dip into my paint water, put it onto my brush. Sorry, didn't mean to smack it. And then keep putting this on. And so we got a nice sort of yellowy tan color going on. Need more water. There we go. Whoa, too much. And then we can spread this around and thin this out. And then we can make areas of this a little bit lighter, a little bit less light. Looking at this relative to the whole canvas, I'm going to bring this down to about halfway. It's probably a little bit lower than I need to bring it, like just a tiny amount lower, but it's easy just to say go down to halfway. So I'm just going to add this color down all the way, halfway down the canvas, even potentially going a little bit farther. It's hard to go too far down. It's, I would say, impossible to go too far down. But you definitely can bring it not far enough and wind up with a different balance. It's not always bad, just different. All right, getting more water, more paint so I can get these sides just a little bit covered. And over here as well, just a little bit covered. Doesn't have to be tons, but it's always nice to wrap that color around. Okay, so I brought it down clearly a little bit more than halfway. Now we want to start adding a little bit of texture to our sky. So that's probably far enough. Happy with that. We need some areas of lightness, some areas of darkness. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the areas of darkness first, and then we're going to achieve that by adding a little bit more black to this color we're using here. Black goes a huge way. It goes super long. I always tell people you don't need much. So I'm going to take that much black. I'm going to mix it in here, and you're going to see the difference it makes with just a little bit of amount. Do you see the difference? That much black, man, that's a lot of black. Well, that's definitely enough black. So now that I've got a little bit of a darker color, I'm going to start adding in some darkness up here. I'm going to grab a little bit more black, mix that in. That might be going too far. I might need more white to balance that out, but we can probably mush it together. Wow. There we go. My colors are unfortunately really wet today, so. Okay, so let's get a little bit of darkness coming in here. Just all throughout the sky. You just want swishes of darker color coming through. I mean, I'd probably play around with this a little bit. I want it to be more yellow, more red, a little bit more saturated. So I'm going to mix these guys together. So when it looks like that, that's too much red. To fix that, you just add more yellow. And it should come towards an orange direction like that. So we've got an orangey color. It's still a little bit too saturated though, so we want to bring a little bit of that color out. And you can do that one of two ways, or both. Add white or black or both. So I'm going to add a little bit more black. Adding black can also tell you maybe what colors you've got too much of or too little of. And I think that should be okay. That should probably be, it's a little bit too brown. So I'm going to take a little bit of white back into here. Get it to be a little bit more gray. Again, take a little bit of that color out. And let's try that. And maybe just a little bit more. Still a touch more, too much brown. So I'm going to keep on adding a little bit of white. And then a little bit of black. Alrighty. And then that should be probably as good as it really needs to be. Yeah, that'll be fine. So we're adding a little bit more black, or sort of this dark color swishing through these clouds up here. Going back and forth, and you're just blending it gently as we do this. And then towards the bottom, it's supposed to get a bit lighter. So once I've added that in, got a good amount of that. I especially want it up in this top right-hand corner where my moon is going to be, because the moon's pretty bright. So adding some more dark up there will increase the contrast and make it stand out a little bit more. Okay, and then after that's done, I'm gonna wash my brush off here. I do wish I had just a little bit more of this original paint color that I had to start with, but it's all right, we'll figure it out. Because we want to bring a little bit of brightness back in. So I want to take some white, add that to the color that I was mixing beforehand. Potentially, especially if it's still quite wet, you can always get away with just adding straight white and wet blending it in. And so now we're going to add this lighter color in some areas, especially towards the bottom here. It's going to mix and mingle a little bit with the darker areas until we get a nice texture. And I guess like one of the biggest thing you want to be looking for is you just want nice smooth transitions. You want a canvas that's sort of fighting back and forth between bright and dark. You've got some light shafts coming in, you've got some dark ones. The right side should be a little bit darker than the left side, although some of this darkness does come right through the middle, right underneath here. Just gonna grab a little bit more water, probably a little bit more white too, make it a bit brighter. You can also possibly add a little bit of yellow to whiten it up and keep that nice color in there, but you don't want to overdo it, otherwise it's going to look like weird yellow. And it's not going to look like the beautiful light tan color that we're trying to get here. Let's go over here a little bit. Smooth that out. A little bit more brightness over here. I think I want to bring some of this darkness back in over here. And then some brightness we want to kind of have cutting right through the top here. So we're going to bring a little bit of that in. Ta-da. Okay, and we're looking pretty good. I think I might take a little bit more of this dark color and work that back in. So I'm going to wash off my brush, give it a little dabby dab. Oh, and thanks so much for the ghost. I'm spooked, but appreciative. Gonna get a little bit more of this dark color up on my brush, if I can get it there. At this point, I mean, whatever color's here is probably gonna be what we gotta work with, so. Can maybe take a little bit of black and add that in, but we do need it to be like a tiny amount of black. Okay, good. And a little bit more. Up in here. Make it nice and dark, add in a couple layers. And then we want a little bit of darkness right over here. But you don't want these things to be like very chunky. You don't want them to be super one color. You want them to blend nicely between the two colors if you can get it. Alrighty, I think that is probably good enough for sure. So that's fine. We can move on from this now. That's probably the hardest part of this one, is just figuring out that that color, because it's not very intuitive to get there. It's like very light brown almost. All right, so next, there's a couple of different directions that we could take this in. We could do the clouds, we could do the moon. I think the moon is probably going to be next, because I see there is some cloud coming up over the moon here. So I think to do the moon, we're going to cheat. When you're teaching paint nights for people, one thing, the very common problem, people have trouble getting good circles. So what you can do is you can bring one of these little solo cups. Depending on the size, this one I measured is not exactly the right size for this moon up here. This side is too big, this one's too small. But I think we're gonna go with the bottom size here, and you can always make it a little bit bigger if you want. So I'm just gonna take some pure white with my little detail brush here, and then we're gonna paint this around the rim of this this cup here. So it doesn't really have to be super precise. You're gonna paint it to, I would say maybe probably, we got 3/4 of the moon. So paint it to about halfway. Make sure that you get a good amount of paint on there. You don't want gobs of it, but you do want like a decent amount of paint. So that's about halfway there. Thanks so much for the follow and the likes. And now I've never tried this with a cup before, so I'm interested to see how this is gonna work out. I've tried this with a sponge, it works very well. So I think a cup will probably work the same way. My only concern is that the paint might not come off exactly the way I think it's gonna. But we're gonna find out. We're doing it live. And whenever you're looking where this break is, there's like a really faint break right here. You wanna just kind of figure out positioning where you can kind of twist it back and forth a little bit, but you don't wanna twist it full 360 degrees. So I'm gonna keep the break over here. The opposite side has my paint. I'm gonna bring it down a little bit from the top and a little bit in from the side. Let me just do a quick look there, and then you're gonna put it on, press it onto the canvas, and then twist to the left, trying to keep it more or less in the same area. Twist to the right. And that didn't really work very well. I don't think that I'm unsure if this would be helpful for people, but It's a good little stencil to work with, because then from here, what you can do is you can come in with your little detail brush, get a little bit of white on that, and now you've got a line to follow that makes it a little bit easier. So we can take a little bit of this, and then just follow this line, expand it out a little bit. Also, a good opportunity to make the moon a bit bigger here, more circular if you want. So you can, again, just take white and keep expanding this line until you're happy with it. So I'm going to bring mine down here, make mine a little bit more circular. And then bring it down there. And so at this point, it's starting to come in the right direction. The paint behind it's still a little bit wet, and so trying to get really strong lines of the white on the outside might be a bit challenging right now. But we can at least get the general shape down, and then we can always come back to it in a minute. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with my general shape and placement of my moon. Gonna get a little bit more white around the edges, but this is a good point to now do the interior of the moon. So if we make this nice and smooth, you go over here, another bit of a weird technique. Gonna grab some paper towel, just a little bit. You don't need a ton, and you want to kind of scrunch it up. So you know how paper towel is quite flat. You want to scrunch it like this, and we're looking for like very uneven texture. So you're looking for something that does look like you've just scrunched it up. And from here, what we can do is we can dip it into a little bit of our white, or you can even paint it onto the paper towel with your brush. Get nice coverage, make sure that it gets all in there. You don't want it like soaking with paint, otherwise it's just gonna come off in a blob. You want it to still have a nice texture on it. But from here, now we can start crimping it on the inside of the moon. And this will probably look best when it's still a little bit wet. So you can even add, I wouldn't add water to the paper towel, but you can add water to your paint for sure. I'm just trying to get paint all over my paper towel, but also not have too much of it. And then again, we're just gonna keep on dotting this, getting like a little bit less. We want more towards the top of the moon, but as we get towards this little break, we want less and less of it. And yeah, it looks pretty good. And there you go, now you got a moon starting. If you want to make it a little bit smoother, a little bit more blendy, we're gonna have more work done on the moon soon, and it is gonna grow a little bit, I think. It'll get a little bit bigger. But if you do wanna smooth it out, this is a great time. You can grab one of your little medium-sized brushes, something that's got like a nice bristle on it, something that's not too flat. Put a little bit of water on it, make sure it's nice and, I always say, not soaking wet, but like a little bit damp. And then from here, we can just do really gentle pokes around our moon, and this will smooth it out a little bit. And you can always come back in and do a couple layers of this to smooth it out even more. You can even come back in with a darker color if you want. So if you, I don't know if I've got any of this paint left, but let's see if I can get any of it up. I've got a darker color here now, so from this I can also come in and go in the middle a little bit. It's not very much darker, but I can maybe get it to be a touch if I can just add in a little bit of black. There we go. Get a little bit of this going on. Get that all mixed in there. Okay, I've got a good amount of gray, so let's try this. And that is a little bit more of that dark color coming in, so that's good. Okay, I think that'll be a good number now, and then we can add more white on later. So we've got a good starting to our moon. Excellent, good stuff. Now we can do some clouds. I haven't done clouds with these brushes before, but I'm thinking that this one's probably gonna be the easiest one to do clouds with. These clouds particularly, like there's lots and lots and lots of different ways to do clouds, so like don't get too hung up on exactly the way that you're doing it. But for these ones, I think that I want a pretty bristly. I'm just gonna dip into some plain white. And then with clouds, the biggest thing to keep in mind is they're a bit chunky on top and they're a bit flat on the bottom. So you want to keep that shape in mind. You can see it's kind of chunky up here, and then it's kind of flat here. Kind of chunky up here, kind of flat here. Kind of chunky up here, kind of flat here. So up here, just going to be dotting in the rough shape of this cloud. I'm literally just poking the canvas a little bit. And then we bring it back up a little bit, and then near the edges, we can kind of bring it to that point. And then you can kind of keep doing that. Other thing to keep in mind is clouds will get a little bit less white as they come towards the bottom. So every time I add paint to my canvas, usually you want to go to the top of the cloud and work your way down. So top of the cloud to get a little bit of that bright white paint off to start out with. And then we can kind of bring it down here. With clouds, big things you want to keep in mind are you want like different areas of light and dark. You want it to look a little bit random, so you don't want to think about it too much. So I'm gonna just bring this in. Looking at it, seems okay to me. You can even throw in some of these like side-by-side strokes. Depending on how wet your background is, you might be a little bit limited as to what you can actually get done with it. But we'll work on it. Got a little bit of white up here. And again, bringing, after I put a little bit of white up towards the top of the cloud, that's when we're gonna start bringing it down. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that one for now. I think afterwards, a nice thing to do with clouds is once you got most of the cloud ready to go, what we can do is we can wash off our brush, get it, again, clean, damp, but not soaking wet. And then we can do a similar thing to the moon where we just come in with this and we just make the soft a little, or the bottom a little bit softer. And we can bring a little bit of that softness up into some areas of the cloud, but you don't want it all over the cloud. You just want a little bit of softness so you got like a nice little transition from a lighter part to a darker part. And again, once you get this down, you can always come back and add on a little bit more white after it's had some time to dry. It'll help it really pop out if that's the effect that you're looking for and the one that you want. Now for this, I'm gonna go ahead, add in some more white. I don't think I want to go over my moon yet because I want to do a little bit more work on it. It needs to be a lot brighter, and then I have a cloud kind of coming in front of it. So I think that we'll let the video on this side, we'll take a break, do the moon, come back and do the clouds. So let's go ahead and add in a little bit more cloudiness down here. We're going to have a little bit of a break, and then a little bit of that. You can also add in a little bit of those, especially on the other sides of the clouds, these back and forth strokes, just real gentle, real light. Helps a lot. Get those sort of just really wispy cloud shapes. And you can even bring this cloud up into this one and maybe a little bit more up on this side. Make that a little bit thicker. I'm pretty happy with that guy. He was pretty good. Pretty easy to do right off the bat. And then there's maybe like another little guy just poking in over here. Easy peasy. Got that. Now, that's all great. That's coming along. Happy enough. There is a distinct lack of cloud up here. I'm going to bring this guy up a little bit higher because I think I maybe brought him in a bit too low, but that's all right. You can always grow a cloud. Yeah, it looks all right. And bring this guy down. And with clouds and trees and crap like that, it never has to match the reference exactly. I mean, as long as it looks like a cloud, it'll be just fine. I really doubt anybody's going to care or notice. But I want to work a little bit more on this moon. So I think what I'm going to do now, since this is relatively dry, it's still a little bit wet, but it's still good. It's dry enough. Going to take my detail brush. Going to grab some white on top of here. I need to clean it a little bit better. Still had a little bit, too much of the other color. So I've got some pure white on my detail brush. And from here, I'm just going to go on expanding my moon a little bit, almost like outlining it, you know, with a little bit of pure white. As I do this, it's going to grow a little bit, like I am going a little bit over the edge. Want to make sure that my paint's nice and loose. I've got lots of water in it because it's going to help me get clear, clean edges. Okay. More water, more paint, more water, more paint. Make it a bit thicker as it gets towards the light side of the moon here. Looking pretty good. And then as I get towards the bottom, right around here, this is where I really want it to kind of like thin out. And then once you get this edge on your moon, sometimes it can be really sharp and people don't like that. So once you get that edge in, what you can always do is just, again, take your little detail brush. You can leave paint on if you want, but I've taken mine off. And then you can just poke at this edge. It'll make it nice and rough, and it will make it look a little bit like there's kind of like craters transitioning between each of these edges. And then you get a nice soft edge like that. Looks really pretty and really nice if you're doing a moon type thing like this. So now I want to do the other side of the moon. Gonna go back in, detail brush, white paint. We're gonna come to where I want it to kind of come off here. Thin line, and as I come around it, I'm gonna push a little bit harder. I'm also gonna keep in mind my circular shape, and I'm gonna try and maintain as much of a circular shape as I reasonably can. Yeah, there we go. A little bit more water. Alrighty, I think that is probably good. We're just going to do a little bit of cleanup around the edge to make it a bit softer, right around here. Alrighty. That's looking good. And then we can even come in to some areas a little bit deeper into the moon. And we can add in a little bit more white paint to really give that impression that you're looking at a cratered surface here. And we just want to make sure that these edges are nice and blended. And then if you want, you can come back in again with the paper towel. And we can get a little bit more of that white. Different texture coming in there. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I might go back and touch it up at some point in time, but it's good enough for now. My big brush go. There it is. Okay, so moon's looking pretty good. Let's come back in and let's do some clouds now. Wow. Okay. And then we need a little bit of white paint on our brush. We don't want huge amounts of it, so when you're doing clouds, you just want it to be a little bit like that. Like, you don't need gobs of paint. I'm trying to think of a good way to show this. You don't need gobs of paint on it. You just need like enough to cover the bristles. And then, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get that to focus. Whatever. But you just need a little bit of it on. And so now we can come up and come over our moon a little bit. It's probably best when it's had lots of time to dry, but it's all good. Let's just have some coming up over here and then coming up right down there. So there's one cloud coming in. There's another cloud coming in from down here, kind of cutting it off. And then it's gonna come in slightly lower than these guys. I do wish my moon was a bit lower now, but that's all right. And come down with this cloud. And yeah, just some wispy strokes at the end of it helps a lot. Add in some chunk, right? Clouds are very uneven around the top, so it's always nice to be able to add in a little bit of chunkiness to it. It looks a little bit random. Gonna add a little bit more white up here near the top of the cloud. Show it's kind of covering up my moon. And then that way, and up that way. And again, you want these areas where it's really opaque, really light, and then these areas where it's really dark. That'll help with the cloudy effect. Right now, I don't love the shape of my cloud. I don't think that it is looking as good as I'd like it to look. But I don't have a lot of options at this point. So, you know, sometimes you just gotta roll with what you got. I can try to make it a little bit chunkier looking by increasing the height there. We can also screw around with the one on top of it a little bit. And then we can kind of blend these guys together just a touch. But we want a really nice, strong top line up here. Maybe even do one of those guys and then, yeah, a little bit of that. And so when you're trying to add the areas of light and dark inside the clouds, you can always also kind of almost elect a part of it to be a cloud that's inside of a cloud or overlapping a cloud. So this now is going to kind of almost look like two clouds. So I'm going to bring this down here. And now I'm just going to, again, preserve that top line, but I'm going to keep the bottom of it a little bit more opaque, or more transparent, sorry. And then again, we're going to come in with a little bit more paint up here, just so we know where our top line is. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that one. Those clouds are looking a lot better, so that's pretty good. I'm going to get a little bit more wispiness coming on down here. Just like that. And then I think that that is possibly even a little bit too low. So my mountains might come up past it, but that's all right. Let's go ahead and make that a little bit wispier towards the end and make that make a little bit more visual sense. Nice. Okay, we got a nice little moon nestled in some clouds. I'm really liking the effect. I think it looks really good. Now what? I can go back. I can match the highlights on the left and the right side a little bit. So we can add a little bit more really strong white up to the top of these clouds. And that'll help us get some nice white tops to these clouds. It'll look pretty good. And let's bring a little bit of this down into here in some random areas. You want it to be, again, pretty random looking. You don't want it to be look like it's manufactured, because clouds just are not manufactured. I mean, it's a picture of a cloud, so it is manufactured, but you know what I mean. And a little bit more white up in here, maybe. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with these guys. So I'm going to leave the clouds there, and then we'll focus on the other parts of the painting. So, other things we got to get done here are some nice purpley pinky mountains. So for that, you're going to need mostly red with a little bit of blue. My palette's an absolute mess right now, so we might actually switch over to a slightly different one. But, yeah, I'll mix it right over top of here. So we need a pinky color. So we're going to need like a lot of red with a little bit of blue in it, and then we're probably going to need something else. Thank you so much, Bray Design. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Okay, so we've got some red here. We've got some blue, so we're going to put those in. And we want it to be pinky, so whenever you want to make like a red pink, you want to just add white to it. So we're going to add white to our red here with just a little bit of blue in it. And I think I'm going to need just a touch more blue. Looking at the color I have up there, the color I have here, a little bit more blue would be great. Bring it in a slight purpley direction. I'm mixing this over top of the white, sort of gray I was mixing earlier, because it has dried by now. And after that, it's a little bit too purple, so I'm going to take a little bit more red and work that in. And then we might also, after this, need a little bit of white. But we're going to see how this looks on the canvas. Whenever you're doing mountains, these particular ones are pretty smooth. So these guys, you don't really need to worry about chunking it out too much, but it's usually pretty good just to kind of keep an eye on where they're coming in. So it's coming in a little bit lower. If my canvas is here and here is about halfway, where mountains are coming in a little bit above halfway down to about halfway. So if I find halfway on my canvas here, that's where I want the bottom of mountains to be, and then I want my top to be coming up right around here. So if I, again, mark halfway on my canvas, we're going to be covering a lot of this up anyway, so we can always just put in a little bit of reminders to let us know where we want things. So if we are halfway-ish there, we can put in a little purple dot there, pull it over on this side, and say, okay, that's about our halfway mark, maybe a little bit above our halfway mark, so we can maybe even bring it a little bit lower than that. So this one on the right side is coming off, doesn't have a peak, and it is going to come down to about the middle of the moon. So I'm thinking, okay, my moon's here, if I come down here, just like, whoa, just like that. We're going to see the corner of a mountain. You can fill this guy in. Looking at how he's looking on my canvas here, I would like him to be just a touch brighter. But we are also going to probably be adding in a little bit of white on top anyway, just to kind of add a little bit of definition. So I'm going to leave it like that for now and keep going with this color. If I'm looking at this peak, you can tell it's a little bit higher than this one. So I want to come over here, go a little bit higher and say, well, this mountain peak maybe goes up to about there. And then it comes down to about there. And then whenever we've got one of these guys where it just kind of chunks up a little bit, pretty easy just to go like this, and then like that. And we can fill that in. There is going to be a purple mountain right in front of this. It's not too much of a big concern right now, because purple will cover up pink very handily. Super easy. I think right now we want to add a little bit of white into what we got working on here. So I'm going to just pull this down, pull this one down here. Looking pretty good. I think this guy could use a little bit more of a peak, so what we'll do is we'll do one of these and pull it down like that. And we just gotta make sure we smooth that out there. So that'll be all right. We'll throw a purpley mountain right in front of it too, so that'll help. And then what we're gonna do now is we wanna kind of add a little bit of depth and texture to this. So the way we're gonna do that is we're just gonna do some wet blending, which means you're basically mixing colors on the canvas instead of on your palette. So I'm gonna take a little bit of white, mix it into the pink that I've got here to lighten it up a little bit, and then we're just gonna add in some of these strokes in the direction the mountain is going. So that's kind of important. You wanna always make sure that your brush strokes are following the contour of whatever object you're doing. Sometimes it's a bit tricky and not obvious to do that, but it's the best thing to do. And then what we're looking for is this kind of textured pattern. So you want something that looks like it has depth, something that has light and dark parts. Again, coming in on this side with just a little bit of this bright pink, we are going to probably just come down like this, and then like that. And again, pull this down. And we don't want one color, we want lots of different colors. And we just want to make sure that wherever our brush strokes are going, they're kind of more or less going down in the direction of the mountain. Oh, and we're gonna drop our brush all over the place. Let's get a little bit more water in here, and then let's pull that guy down a little bit like that. That looked nice. It's got a little bit of a light there. You can always come back in again with a little bit darker or lighter colors. Either way is fine. To add a little bit of that texture, a little bit of that definition to each of these mountains. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with the pink mountains. I think they're good enough. Looking at our indigo mountains. So this is going to be a purple like we did with this, but we're going the exact opposite direction. Instead of using lots of blue with red, we're going to use lots of red with blue. We're going to use lots of blue with red. So I'm going to wash off my brush. I'm done with the paint color, I think, for now. I might have some touching up to do, but that's all good. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some of this red here, put it right over the color we were mixing, because we're done with it, but you can pretty much use it, and it's close enough that it's not really going to have a dramatic below it. And then we're going to take some blue, and we're going to mix these guys together. And we might even need a little bit more pure red and blue, so I'm going to do a little bit of blue on the side. It actually makes the blue look a little bit darker. And then there's a certain point where you add so much red that it goes back to purple, but with these guys, they look like they might have a little bit of black in them too, but black's pretty dangerous. It's easy to overdo black, so I think I'm going to go in with just purple and see how that looks. And if I feel like they need to be darker, then I'm going to just add black to it. So I think that this is probably good enough, what I've got working here. It's looking real dark compared to this, so maybe we will. I'm going to do just the blue first, and maybe we'll add black over top. So now, looking at where these mountain peaks are, they don't have to be in the exact same spots, but if I want to kind of follow this as closely as I can come right up here and then right over top of my pink. It's still a little bit wet, but the blue is so much darker than it'll cover it up pretty well. Then we come down to about here. Okay, and I think that's probably enough. There's just like a little corner of this pink one sitting there. Then we'll come up here for a little bit, chunk down just a bit. Come up here a little bit, chunk down just a bit. You need a bit more water on my brush. There we go. And then slightly higher, but not quite as high as this guy right here, we're gonna come up with the rest of this side of the mountain. And then on this side of the mountain, we're gonna come right down into the pink. Whoa. Like this, and then once we get a little bit of the pink, then we're gonna chunk up, and then back down, like that. And then with this guy, since he's kind of in the front here, we do want a pretty straight line right across. So what we're gonna do next is put a straight line right across the mountains, and we're gonna fill it in. So take this straight line right across like that, and then just fill it in. When you do this, sometimes it gets a bit thinner, but that's all right. We're supposed to have this mist stuff towards the bottom, so it's a-okay if it gets a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter. That does happen, and that's fine. You might need more paint at points, but you don't want to put it on too thick, otherwise it's going to have a hard time drying. And then, usually like to, yeah, about that. I always test on my skin, and then with really light strokes come in, and put it on there. When you test it on your, and then, usually like to, yeah, about that. I always test on my skin, and then with really light strokes come in, and put it on there. When you test it on your skin, you should like kind of get it blending a little bit there. I'm going to switch to my medium-sized brush so that we can get a little bit less sharp edges on the mist. So I'm going to take that off. Switching over to medium-sized brush like this. And then we are going to get that on there. Make sure it's not too painty. If it, oh shoot, I just dipped it into my definitely not the right color paint. So we're going to go ahead, wash that off and try again. Okay. So we don't want it to be hugely painty. You don't want gobs of paint. You want it to be quite thin, right? You don't want a ton of paint on this. And then we're going to go ahead and now we're going to start putting in that top line on the mist. And we're going to bring a little bit of this down. You can dot it. You can swirl it. I usually do it in this back and forth sort of swirly motion. Like this. And then as we get to the sides of our mist, we want them to be nice and gassy looking, so you can go ahead and just poke the edge, basically. Make it nice and thin. Just like we did with the clouds up top. It's really a very similar strat. The only difference, I think, with this one is it looks a little bit smoother than the ones at the top. So I think what I'm going to do is take a little bit more, and we're going to layer some of this towards the bottom, right where that differentiation is between the lake and the mountains. And one thing I don't like about this is it's a little bit too orderly looking. So it might look a little bit strange right now. Oh, thanks so much for the gift. And one of the big reasons for that is that this line is very straight. So I always tell people not to do this. And then of course I just did it. But the line's just a little bit too straight. So the ways we can go ahead and fix that, make it a little bit chunkier looking, is one thing we could try is just wash up our brush and see if we can paint any of this away. Try to get that to be a little bit chunkier. It pulls some of the color into the background and makes it look a little bit more misty on some areas. And then if we can bring this guy down over here as well. Let me just clean my brush one more time. And then we can probably take a little bit of this paint off here. Fingers, also a great little tool for smoothing out paint when needed, or removing paint also. Get a little bit wet, take your fingers, And then just take a little bit off. So now that already looks way nicer as far as mist goes, and the reason for that mainly is I haven't really done too much to it other than just make this top line a lot more chunky looking, right? And we can bite it back in both ways, so we can grab a little bit more of this light color, add that towards the bottom, get a little bit more of that chunk in there, and really define these areas as like, these are the misty areas. And just kind of play around with it. It's really a visual game, right? You just kind of go around, take a look, see what you gotta do, what feels right to you, what feels right to your eye. And then I've added a little bit of that purple in, which is a good sequitur into my next step. Another way you can do this, you can put on like mist in the wrong areas, or if you don't like where you put the mist, you can always, if you still have a little bit of a background color next or left, or you could mix up the color again, do the exact same thing in the opposite direction. So instead of doing my mist up, I'm gonna do this purple down. And that will also help really reinforce that there are some light areas and some dark areas. It'll help smooth things out, help them blend together just a little bit. And so that looks a lot nicer. A lot nicer than it did before. I've got a little bit of a middle area here where I'm maybe scraping off a bit too much paint. That's all right. Let me see if I can get any more of this dark color going on. There we go. Bring it up into the mountains. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. So we've got a nice little misty effect going on. The only real thing that we got to add in now is the trees. The trees, I don't exactly know how I'm going to do it. These brushes are a lot bigger than the brushes that I used to use. So oftentimes when I'm doing trees like this, I would say use your like medium-sized brush. But for me, that's going to be a little bit too big. So I think what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to take a really dark purple. So I'm going to take some blue, probably a lot of blue, with a little bit of red. Mix these guys together so I get a nice purple, and then add black to this so that it becomes very dark. And what that'll do is that'll give you a silhouette color that you can use that will not look as jarring as a straight black will. I need to verify that I'm me for some reason. There we go. Okay, excellent. And so if you mix up a purple like this and then you add black to it, it ends up being like a dull off black, and it just always stands out a little bit less and goes with the painting more. So usually the reason why so many things in paintings are like silhouetted like this is because people don't want to have to put the detail on, because putting the detail on is where people kind of sometimes run into problems. But getting the silhouette is like step number one. So that's why we do that. But if it's just straight black, sometimes it stands out too much and it just looks a little bit weird. So usually people like it better when it's got a little bit of red and blue. It's very traditional art knowledge. You don't have to stick with that. You can always do pure black if it's really what you like to do. But for me, I think what I'm gonna do is get a lot of this paint on here out of my brush so that I get a nice clean line on it. And then once I get that down, I want to kind of decide where I want my trees to be. So I might end up doing this with my detail brush, but we'll find out. I'm going to pay attention to where these guys are. They don't have to be in the same spot. The thing that's really important about these guys is the shape. So you want to keep the shape of this tree line the same, and that will have the biggest impact on how your painting looks. If you have this tree coming down here and then up here, that's pretty much all you need. Just a V shape is what you really want. But it also helps when the trees are all different heights and thicknesses and stuff like that. So let's start with this guy in the middle here. He's coming up right past this mountain. People always hate this part because you've worked really hard on a background and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, whatever. It's like I'm scared to put this thing onto my canvas. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to see how thin a line I can get with this brush. I might go with the detail brush, but we'll find out. So I'm going to come down here and we're just going to do one thin line. Straight down like this. That should be good enough. It's not too thick, but I don't know. I might do detail. I'm gonna try this a couple more times. I'd like to be able to do it with this brush. Wow, that started dragging to the left, but that's all right. That looks good too. Let's keep on chucking in some more and more trees here. We're just gonna start with them as single lines. Kind of like how people draw stick people. We're drawing stick trees, just with like one little line for the trunk. And we'll come down here and a little bit further away, underneath here. Right down to there. This guy we want, right in the center is where we want to come down the lowest, and we're going to come down to maybe about right there. And we got another one kind of halfway in between sizes. Okay, so that last one might have been a bit thick, but I think I'm tempted to try to get away with using this for these guys, but I don't think that there's any way that I can get branches that fine with this brush. So we're going to go ahead and put this away, and we're going to use the detail brush, I think, which is a bit weird. Is there any way that I can just like really gently add on some? Trying to think. I think the detail brush is going to be the easiest for people. People have trouble if they use the big one. The trade-off, and the reason why I'm reluctant to use the detail brush, is that it usually takes a long time to do things with the detail brush. So it's not always very nice in a paint night to have that be a restriction, but we'll do our best with it here. So we're just going to add on. These branches, looking at them, they don't really need to come away in any particular direction. They are basically just going up and out. I swear I did these. I didn't do these. I did deciduous trees. I did do a couple of the other ones using the big brush, but that was a bit different. I don't think I like these branches. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to be able to use the detail brush for this. I think I have to use the big one because I can't get a fine line on the detail brush. It's too thick. Let's try it and see how it goes. So I'm just going to take as much paint as I can realistically take off of this one. Out of it. Get that nice and paint-free. The more paint and water in your brush, the more bloated it'll be and the harder it is to get a fine line. So right now, I'm just getting a bit of water in here. We're gonna try and take a little bit of paint on the sides here, not too much. Yeah, that'll work. We just need to make sure that we don't get too much paint into our brush. We just need to use the sides. So let's go ahead and start putting these guys in here. I am having a bit of trouble with the length of the brush, but that's all right. Let's get a couple of these guys in and let's just go from here. Put in some branches that are just going to kind of guide us. Wow. Just like that. Wow. So I'm starting out pretty sparse, just so I got a good idea of the shape of my tree. And I only need to bring it down to I'd say about there. Maybe just a bit lower. As the tree comes down further, the branches should grow in size to be longer. We don't want to like overdo it too much because it can be kind of weird. Alrighty. And then let's start filling this in. So now we have an idea of where our branches should go. We can go ahead and start filling these in. I'm just touching really, really lightly with the corner of my brush. I don't want it to go in any particular direction. I do want to have a bunch of different branches going on up here. But I think that I maybe got a little bit too long at the top. That's okay though, because you can always come back and do some different things with the branches. You can bring them down a little bit less far than you normally would. I think it's going to be hard for people to do. I wish I had my other brushes. Wow. Okay, I think I'm definitely going to need to do a little bit of like fussing with the edges of the branches, but it is coming along. Hi, how's it going, Molly? How are you? Sorry if I missed that. It's hard to keep track of people in the comments while I'm doing this. I gotta figure out a better solution for that. Okay, let's try doing this guy over here. He starts off pretty good. What's the best part of the brush to use for this? Or can I use the handle of the brush for this? No, that'd be too big. And yeah, it comes right off the side here, so we don't need too much of this guy. We just need to kind of indicate that there are branches coming down on this side, so that's nice and easy. And then we can come off the side of it a little bit too. Less work needed for that one. Okay, looking good. Coming in from down here, we're going to be adding in some more branches. Just like this. And then as you get toward the areas where the trees overlap, the branches matter a lot less. You can get away with a lot. You're painting beautiful things. It's so preppy. I don't know what that means. I mean, I've heard the word preppy before, but it doesn't make sense in this contest. Wow. Thanks very much. I did not design this painting. This is just a painting, but I mean, I'm obviously painting this one, so it's doing my best to capture the essence of it. I'm teaching this one tonight at the, I don't know if you're in Calgary, the WXYZ Hotel by Banff Trail. So I'm just doing a little demo for it. I do being down. The actual one actually, yeah, now I'm thinking about this, the canvases that I'm going to be using are going to be much bigger than this one, so it'll probably be a bit easier to do the trees, which is good, because then you have to pay a little bit less attention to things, like where it's going and stuff like that. So I'm going to come down here and bring it all the way down to my water line. After that, we can obviously fill this in with just like kind of dark black paint. Just like that. I think normally when I do this, I would hold off on filling in the bottom here until we're 100% done with all of the trees, but I'm just going to show you what that's going to look like, because the rest of this is really just going to be me filling in these trees. And you can kind of get a little bit of a rough line like that, pull the branches down into this darkness right here. And that's kind of where we want it to go. Gonna need more of this purple. I'm just gonna mix some in here and bring this right down here. Whoa. Okay, I think that's probably good enough for now. I mean, like, again, you don't really have to do this step now. You can do this at the end. I normally would do it at the end. I was just curious how it's gonna affect the overall look. It informs how I want the trees to look, really, is what it does. And nobody ever looks at the bottom, but you know, get the bottom if you can. You get a little bit more paint going on over here. Just get this a little bit thicker, a little more opaque. And then we'll go back to trees. Okay, we're gonna need some more of this purple, so I'm just gonna mix up more of that with some blue, with some red. And then I need a little bit more black to really darken it up again. All right, nice. like this, put all that back in if we can. Alrighty. And then I do feel like I've got too much paint in my bristles at the moment, which is unfortunate. Because now I've got to waste a lot of it by pouring it off. But I do need that sharp line. Something that I really can't really live without when I'm doing it in this size. Okay. Let's go ahead and add some more trees. Oh, that was too thick by far. Well, we can clean it up a little bit. Grab my little detail brush, fix that bit. Now let's go ahead and keep adding just a little bit of these guys going on here. These guys go out a little bit more at a cross angle. I think mixing them up, it looks a bit messy actually. I don't quite know how I want to do these guys. And then once we get to the bottom of it, again, we get the luxury of starting to be able to care a lot less about what it properly looks like. Because these just kind of merge into blackness after a while. There we go. And then we can again bring this up and fill that in. Okay, let's get the other side as well. That's looking pretty good. Once you fill them in, they start to come together a bit. As you go through this process, you may pick up a little bit too much paint. You might have to wash your brush. Shoot does happen, as they say. And if we keep these a little bit more opaque towards the center, it'll help to add some water to my brush, get some of this paint off of it. Yeah, it's a nice thin line that I like. Nice. Okay, let's keep on going. And hopefully be done with these trees pretty quick here. Looking pretty good. Got a little bit of white showing through. And if you come down here, you can add a little bit more paint on this bottom part. Darken it up a little bit more. And it's coming together. All right. Okay, let's throw in the other half of these trees here. Just gonna get some more water on my brush, make sure that it's nice and smooth. So we got another one coming up into the mist. This one's quite tall actually. Right about there, maybe. Another one coming up a little bit past this mountaintop. Right there, and then one just peeking into the pink there. Oh, yeah, no, that's about right spot for it. The ones on the right side more densely packed than the ones on the left side. So you're gonna have a little bit more opaqueness over here. I think I am gonna touch up these ones right before I move on though, because I definitely need a little bit more darkness down here. We need to make sure that this V shape is reflected in both the top and the bottom. So we wanna make sure that that kind of comes down nicely like that into this darkness down here. Take a little bit of this paint and then smooth it out as we get down to the bottom there. Okay. Same thing on the right side here. We're going to start by putting our trees on. This guy. Oh, that came up too high. This is the danger with these particular brushes. I brought this one down the middle a little bit too far low. I could make it grow a little bit bigger, but I don't think I care too much to. I think right around here is where I can start calling it. So we can raise this guy just a little bit so it kind of comes off, flattens out a little. And then again, whenever you need to take paint off your brush, just wipe it right down there because we're gonna need that to be nice and opaque anyway. Okay. We're taking all this, and then again, going up here, starting out real gentle. Wow. Got not enough water on my brush, I think, so I'm going to take that, a little bit of water, get more paint in my water, a bit more paint on the brush. It's also a little bit hard to see the black through the purple mountain background, but that's all right. This can be a little bit taller. gonna start them nice and sparse, just tapping them. Come together about here, and then yeah, we can kind of lose them a little bit as they come down towards the bottom. Again, whenever I feel like I've got a little bit of extra paint on my brush, just go ahead and add it a little bit to the bottom. Help that become nice and opaque. Nice. Okay, this is really going together. I think things I'll do right as a touch-up at the end, I'm thinking about it, are probably screw around with the trees a little bit. I might go into some areas with the detail brush. Also add a little bit more whiteness to the moon and also the top of the clouds. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. All right. This is just one of the many things I gotta get done today too. So this is a good little challenge to be like, hey, well, if I'm prioritizing just getting it done. Whoa. What does that look like, sort of? I don't know what happened there, but I have a bit of a weird brush stroke going on. I think I've got a little bit too much paint or water in my brush, but that's okay. You can come back in a little bit of this, and then just fill it in towards the bottom. You can have a little bit of blue there, and then we just get the paint off like that. So looking at this, thinking about what it might need, I think after it comes down into those, like the trees are pretty okay looking, especially from a distance. This one's a little bit not quite opaque enough, so I'm just gonna take a little bit more of this dark paint, mix it in, and maybe throw in a couple of these branches throughout this one, just so that it's not quite as dark looking as the other one. There we go. And we can kind of make it a little bit chunky towards the bottom too, to kind of ease that transition out. A little bit chunky, like that, and then come back in with some more of this. Gently doing a little bit of a tease there. Okay, so look at where we're at, what we might need. I'm just gonna add in a little bit more white around the moon as a final highlight. Now that it's had time to dry, we can put a really nice layer of white on there. So I'm just going to be adding on my brush, rolling it out, and we're just gonna highlight the edge of the moon here with a little bit of white. I picked up some weird color there. That on, and then once we get that on, just smooth it out a little bit. Just a titch. Looking nice. I like that, with a little bit of the thick paint around the side. That's kind of nice. We can add a little bit of this whiteness up top in these clouds too. Just reinforce that highlight a little bit. I picked up a little bit of black paint from one of the treetops. So that does happen from time to time, that's alright. A little bit more of this white up here too. I'm just dabbing it in because that's all I really need to do. I'm not trying to massively change these. I'm just trying to add a little bit more brightness to the top there. All right. I think I'm pretty happy. Alrighty, nice. Okay, I think that's pretty good. It's a pretty faithful replication of it. I think overall, I think it looks pretty nice, and I am pretty happy to be teaching that one tonight. So I will see you later. I might have another one of these to do, but I might do it tomorrow. So if you are interested in watching, I might be on later, but keep an eye out. Give me a follow if you